Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, in the previous class we talked about language and the brain. We started this chapter, right? Neurolinguistics. So we talked about the relationship between language and the brain. That how is language related to brain, right? We talked about neurolinguistics, that is the study of language in relation to brain. Then we talked about the different parts of human brain involved in different linguistic functions, that is the production of language or comprehension of language, right? We divided the brain into two hemispheres, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. Then we talked about the language faculty in the brain, which is located in the left hemisphere, right? uh, Inside the language faculty, we talked about, certain parts of the brain involved in different linguistic functions. Like we talked about the Broca's area, we talked about the Wernicke's area, then we talked about the motor cortex, right, and the arcuate fasciculus. Today we're going to talk about the localization view, right? Localization view, and the rest of the topics we have got in this lecture, in this chapter. So the localization view, we have already talked about the various parts of brain involved in different linguistic functions, such as the Broca's area, Wernicke's area, arcuate fasciculus, and the motor cortex, right? Now, what do we mean by the localization view? The localization view states that, you know, talking about a particular part of brain being responsible for a particular function, for a particular purpose, right? uh, like if we isolate a particular part of the brain for a particular linguistic function, this view is called the localization view, right? Let me type it here. Talking about a particular part of brain being responsible for a particular linguistic function. What do we mean by this? Let's suppose if we say that the broadcast area is responsible only and only for the production of speech, and it cannot perform any role, any other role, right? And like it has nothing to do with the comprehension of speech. It is responsible only and only for the production of speech, right? And if we say that the production of speech is performed only and only by the Broca's area in the brain, right? And this function, like the production of language, this function, this linguistic function, cannot be performed by any other part of the brain. Now, this view, this perspective, this idea is actually called the localization view. Okay, look, to put it simply, we may say that when we specify a particular part of brain to a particular function of language, this view, this perspective, this idea is basically called the localization view, right? It's not about the production of speech only or Broca's area. If you talk about the Wernicke's area, even like if we say that the Wernicke's area is responsible only and only for the comprehension of speech, and it cannot perform any other function, right? So again, like we are specifying one part of the brain to one linguistic function only. This perspective, this idea is actually called the localization view, right? But this localization view is not, you may say, kind of authentic view, authentic perspective. It's limited in nature. Why? Because it has got certain flaws. If you look at human brain, right? I told you in the previous lecture as well that it's not possible to specify a particular part of brain for a particular linguistic function, right? So if we specify a part of brain for a particular linguistic function, then that is a limited view. That we do not have any evidence for that, right? Even if we do have evidence, and we do have evidences, remember, modern research has conducted so many experiments, as I told you previously, using the modern technology used in the medical field, such as CT scan, some other more modern technological devices. So with the help of these devices, people have proved that yes, these functions are performed by these parts of brain. But again, we cannot separate one part of the brain for one linguistic function only. Why? Because there is interdependency, you may say, or interconnectivity. All these parts of the brain, they are very much they're very highly interconnected with one another, right? If we look at this interdependency, right? So these parts of the brain, they depend on one another. They depend on one another, right? This high level of, you may say, inter interdependence, right, of these parts, different parts of the brain, or you may say interconnectivity, right? All these parts of the brain are highly interconnected with one another. Okay, so like if for example, if we say that the Broca's area is responsible for the production of speech and it cannot perform any other role, we may be wrong. This idea may be misleading. Why? Because this Broca's area is connected with the other parts of the brain, such as Wernicke's area and many other areas of the brain, in hundreds and hundreds of ways, right? In the same way, if we say that the production of language is performed by the Broca's area only, and it cannot be performed by any other part of the brain. Again, we are somewhere misleading. We are wrong, right? Why? Because this is if you look at this, the production of speech, so or the comprehension of speech, so during these processes, there are this central nervous system. If you look at the central nervous system, so the entire nervous system plays its role, right? All the nerves are involved in one way or the other. They are involved, right? More or less, some are involved more, some are involved less than others, but they are involved in one way or the other, right? And if you look at the supply of the blood, the role of the supply of the blood, it also the supply of the blood also plays its role, right? Like when we are producing speech, so it doesn't mean that only the Broca's area is involved in the production of speech. Rather, the supply of the blood may involve some other parts of the brain as well. So this area, this view, again, the localization view, it is somewhat misleading, somewhat limited, right? Because we cannot separate a particular part of brain for a particular linguistic function. So this is about the localization view. Then different people have they have come up with different analogies, because back in past there were no evidences, there was no technology to reach a definite conclusion about the different parts of brain involved in different linguistic functions. So what would they do? They would primarily depend on analogies. They would draw analogies regarding brain. Okay, so like if you look at Sigmund Freud, so he draws the analogy of steam engine. According to him, this brain acts like a steam engine, right? And it creates it builds pressure, right? Pressure in the blood and things like that. Aristotle has got his own perspective about this. Some people in this modern era, they're drawing analogy between a computer system and human brain, right? Like they compare mind with memory, computer memory, and they compare brain with the hard disk, right? So in hard disks we have got different disks, different sectors, right? And same is the case with brain. But again, these analogies are somewhat deficient because though like we may say that human mind is just like computer software, in human brain is like a computer hardware. We have got short-term memory, which is like the RAM of a computer system, and we have got the hard-term, the long-term memory, which is like the hard drive, the hard disk, right, of a computer system. But still, there is a difference, hundreds and thousands of differences between the human brain and a computer system. Human brain and human mind is, much more complex than a computer system. The richness of human mind and human brain that cannot be captured that easily as we can do that of a computer system, a computer hard drive or memory of a computer system, because that is something man-made, right? Human brain is much more complex. And one more thing, if you look at a computer system, so when it gets disconnected of the electric power, it's completely, you may say it is non-functional completely. But human mind and human brain, it is functional all the time. And even if we are sound asleep, even if we become unconscious due to anesthesia or some sudden shock to our brain, right, to our head, we may get completely unconscious, but still thoughts are going on inside our mind unconsciously. If you look at dreams, right? So like what I want to say, the point I want to make here is that to compare human mind to a computer system, to computer human brain to a computer hard drive, that analogy is also you see somewhat limited and not reliable. Yes. So basically, we were talking about the localization view, talking about like when we talk about a particular part of brain and we say that this part of brain is responsible for this particular linguistic function, this view is called localization view. And this view is not a reliable view. This perspective, this idea is not a reliable idea because of so many reasons, right? One of the reasons is that there is interconnectivity, interdependence of all the parts of the brain on one other, right? Um, Another is that the entire nervous system plays its role altogether, supply of the blood, right? So all these are the different reasons due to which we cannot isolate a specific part of brain for a particular linguistic function. Okay, so that view, the localization view, that is a limited view. That is not a reliable view. Coming to the next topic, that is tongue tips and tongue slips, right? We'll start with tongue tip, then we'll move to slips of the tongue, and then we'll talk about slip of the brain as well, okay, and slip of the air. So tongue tips and tongue slips, starting with coming to tongue tips. Tongue tip or tip of the tongue. It is also known as tip of the tongue, right? Sometimes we say it's the name of that person is on the tip of my tongue, right? What do we mean by this? Let me switch to the Urdu language for few words only. कभी कभार हम कहते हैं कि ये मेरे जुबान पे है, बस जुबान पे आ नहीं रहा, यार मेरे माइंड में है बट आ नहीं रहा जुबान पे, right? Like tip of the tongue actually means that when it happens, that situation, when we think that we know a word, but it's at times it's difficult for us to bring it to the surface, right? Like we know the word, we feel that we know the word, like we have that word in our mind, right? And we feel that we know the word, but it is just but it just won't come to the surface, right? For example, if I talk about the seer of your class, his name is, his name, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's, Did you got it? Did you get it? That type of situation when the name of a person or a particular word, a particular number, any kind of word that is in our mind, we feel that it is in our mind. We know that, right? But at times we are unable to bring it to the surface. So we say it's on the tip of our tongue. ये मेरे mind में है, but यार जुबान पे अभी आ नहीं रहा इस वक्त, right? So that kind of situation is there, and this situation is called tip of the tongue. So we may define tip of the tongue as the situation. Tip of the tongue. Tip of the tongue is a situation when we feel that we know a word, but we are unable to bring it to the surface, or we are unable to utter it. By utter it, I do not mean the phonological ability of uttering a word, right? By utter it, I mean like it's difficult for us to recall that word, right? So this situation is actually called tip of the tongue. We've got a related term that is known as that is one is spoonerism. Yeah, spoonerism comes later on, and yeah, spoonerism comes later on. It's there and in the next topic, slips of the tongue, right? This is malapropism, right? Malapropism was actually this word has been this word has actually come from the name of Mr. Malaprop, right? Who was a kind of funny character in a play, right? This play was written by this gentleman, this author, right? So he would produce very frequently. He would produce near misses, right? Near misses for words. Near misses for words means like when we have a word and we mistakenly we utter a word much similar to that word, right? So some examples are here. Sextant, right? This sextant, people produce words for this word sextant. They produce different words such as sextant, sext, right? These were the words which were produced by people instead of the word sextant. Actually, they actually wanted to produce this word sextant, right? When they were asked to produce this word, so what happened? Instead, mistakenly they came up with these words, sextant or sextate, right? So near misses, a near miss means that you miss a word, you utter a related word, a nearly, or a closely related word, right? So that may be that may be a complete word, or that may not be a complete word. That may be a senseless word. Simply, you may say having no sense, having no meaning at all. But it's in pronunciation, it is very much similar to, not similar, rather very close to the word which you actually want to utter. So this is what we call malapropism, right? Like when we want to utter, for example, if I want to utter the word laptop, and instead of laptop, I say laptop, right? Or TikTok, right? So this is what we call nearly miss, near miss. When we miss the exit word and we utter another word much close to the word we actually want to utter. So this is also, example of the tip of the tongues. The a related term to tip of the tongue is malapropism, right? So tip of the tongue. Again, let me repeat. When we feel that we know a word, but we are unable to bring it to the surface, that phenomenon is called tip of the tongue. Sometimes we forget the name of people, sometimes we forget numbers, right? Sometimes we forget names of places, right? For example, like I may forget the name of Los Angeles, so I may say that city, I'm forgetting. It's on the tip of my tongue. You see, we feel that we express that hesitation. Things like that, right? And this is how we express that we know the world, right? इसलिए हम ये और हम ये इस तरह करते ताकि हम इंडिकेट करें दूसरे बंदे को कि मेरे माइंड में वो वर्ड है, वो लफ्ज मेरे माइंड में है, बट इस वक्त मेरी जुबान पे नहीं आ रहा, राइट? सो दिस सिचुएशन इज कॉल्ड टिप ऑफ द टंग, कि हमारे माइंड में हमें महसूस होता हो कि एक वर्ड हमारे माइंड में, हम एक वर्ड जानते हैं, एक लफ्ज हम जानते हैं, बट इस वक्त वो लफ्ज हमारी जुबान पे नहीं आ रहा. दिस इज व्हाट वी कॉल टिप ऑफ द टंग सिंपली. कमिंग टू स्लिप्स ऑफ द टंग, स्लिप, व्हेन वी स्लिप, राइट? जब फिसल जाना, सिंपली यू मे से. ओके, सो slip of the tongue, when when we want to say one thing and we mistakenly we utter, we rearrange the speech sounds of a word, right? It's a situation, you may say, it's a situation in which the sounds of a word, the sounds of words or phrases are rearrange into different order, you may say, right? Like when there is a word and we, or a phrase, right, even a sentence, and what happens, there are we rearrange the words of the sounds of two words, the sounds of two words, right? Let me give you a simple example, then we'll go to the examples of the examples given in this book, right? There is a place in Sawat. The name of the place is Shamuzay, right? There was a person whose name was Ghulam Server, right? Ghulam Server, and his friend wanted to greet him. Then the friend of Ghulam Server wanted to greet Ghulam Server, right? So he wanted to say in Pashto we say Ghulam Sarwara. Sometimes we say Sulaiman Assalamu alaikum, right? Sulaiman. Like when we want to address someone, so we add that sound at the end, right? So the friend of Ghulam Sarwar wanted to greet, to say salam to Ghulam Sarwar. So he said he wanted to say Ghulam Sarwara Salam alaikum, right? Ghulam Sarwara Salam alaikum. So he rearranged these sounds mistakenly because he was in a hurry, and he said Salam Sarwara Ghulam alaikum, right? Instead of saying Ghulam Sarwara Salam alaikum, Ghulam Sarwara Salam alaikum, he said Salam Sarwara Ghulam alaikum, right? So this is how we rearrange the sounds of words, and usually they have got very comic effect, very humorous effect, right? As you can see this one, Salam Sarwara Ghulam alaikum, so it has got a very humorous effect, right? Once I was teaching English to you may say the people in the hostel. I was residing in a hostel near the Agriculture University Peshawar back in 2018. So the people in the hostel, many of them were my friends. Two of them were my students as well. So they requested me to teach them language for a month or so. So we arranged the whiteboard and different things, and I started teaching. I used to teach them in the PMs, late PMs, 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. Right? Anyways, I made them. I would make them present topics. So one of my students there, he was talking about these tribal areas of Pakistan. Okay, so he wanted to talk about this. He wanted to utter the word tribal areas, right? Areas, and in his mind, there the word Kabail was also there. Kabail, right? So he rearranged these words, and he said, we have got Trabail, sorry, we have got tribal, and Kabail. See, I also mixed up the sounds. He wanted to say tribal areas, and in his mind there was the word Kabail. So what did he do? He took this consonant sound, tra sound from the English language. You see, try, ta. But instead of treble, he said trabile, right? So here he inserted that you may say that diphthong number two, I. Instead of saying tribal areas, he said trabile areas. See this bile. So this isle, he added this isle from Urdu. He inserted into his English pronunciation of the word travel. So he said, if you go to the tribal areas, and he repeated this for so many times, right? Then later on, I provided the correction. I said, Mr. So and so, it's not tribal areas, it's tribal areas, right? So again, like you see, rearranging of words. So this is what we call slip of the tongue. हमारी जुबान जब फिसल जाती है, हम एक लफ्ज बोलना चाहते हैं, हम कुछ और बोल देते हैं. This is what we call slip of the tongue, right? Examples for slip of the tongues, they are most of the times very humorous in nature, as I told you earlier, right? Some examples are basically these examples, you know, they're basically called spoonerism, right? They slips of the tongue, particularly the word reversal. When we reverse um, the initial sounds, right? We reverse the initial sounds or the initial consonants, you may say, of two or more words. When there are two or more words, we reverse the initial sounds. We exchange the initial sounds, and this phenomenon has actually come from William Spooner. William Spooner, you see, he was a clergyman at Oxford University, and whenever talking, he would, you know, come up with so many slips of the tongue slips. He was known for that, right? And from his name, this term has been derived, spoonerism, right? From his own name, William Spooner. So if we look at some examples, let's suppose if that example, Ghulam Sarwara Salam Ghulam Sarwara Salam Alaikum, so Salam Sarwar, instead of Ghulam Sarwar, he said, you know, Salam Sarwar, right? Because of Salam Alaikum later on. So these initial letters, they are replaced. You see, they're exchanged actually, and that is what we call spoonerism, which is one of the types of uh, slips of the tongue or tongue slips, you may say, right? For example, if someone says, know your blows, so the person may say, blow your nose. Let me type these examples here. Know your blows, right? So the person may say, blow your nose, right? You see, this sound is here in the beginning of no. We have got the sound, and then in the beginning of blows, we have got the b sound. So these are exchanged. These are reversed, right? And as a result, we have got, instead of no, we have got blow. Instead of blows, we have got nose, right? So this b and n sound, they're reversed, they're exchanged, right? The initial sounds of two or more words are exchanged, right? Then there is a very funny example which has been taken from the lecture of one of history teacher, right? He wanted to say, you have missed all my history lectures. And instead he said, mistakenly, due to slip of the tongue, he said, you have missed all my mystery lectures, right? Now you see, let me pick this pen so that I may highlight it to you. We have got the sound here and the sound here, and these two sounds have been exchanged. The h sound has come here, and the m sound, that is, come there, right? Mystery. So you have hissed all my mystery lectures, right? Another example, once a person wanted to say, go and take a shower, right? So he said mistakenly, go and shake a tower. Don't go for the spellings, right? Because I have already told you that in phonetics and phonology we don't care about the spellings, we care about the sounds only. So go and take a shower, take a shower. When this sh and t sound they're exchanged, so we are left with go and shake a tower. This sh sound, it comes here and the t sound comes here, right? And it has got a very comic effect against again, a very humorous effect. So this is what we call slip of the tongue. One more example. I wish you feel better. So instead, once a person said, I wish you feel fitter. You see, instead of feel, the person said feel because this bus sound was brought here, right? And instead of better, he said fitter because this first sound was brought here, right? So, reversal of the initial sounds of two or more words. This is what you call spoonerism. Okay, we have got so many other examples in types of this, you see, slip of the tongue. Like the we may take a sound from one word to another, right? We may take one sound, we may take a sound from one word to another. How? If let's suppose look at the example, black boxes. There were 10 black boxes, right? For example, there were 10 black boxes. So mistakenly, once a person said there were 10 black boxes. Instead of saying there were 10 black boxes, he said there were 10 black boxes, right? This sound, it was taken from this word to the next word, which is boxes, right? So this is another type of slip of the tongue. In the previous one, which we talked about spoonerism, what happens? The initial sounds, consonant sounds of two or more words, they are reversed, they are exchanged, right? Here in this second type, the one sound is you may say that is taken from one word into another, right? It's made part of the second word as well. That is what you may refer to it as, right? We may carry one word, one sound from, we may carry a sound from one word to another word, just as you can see in this example. Okay. Then there is another type of this, you may say slip of the tongue, right? The initial sounds. If we look at the initial sounds, right? So there may be two words, and the initial consonant of one word may be replaced by another. This is replacement, right? Not let me let myself for an example. Let's suppose if we see cup of tea, right? Cup of tea. So जो हमारे पास पहला वाला example था over there, the very first one, this spoonerism, it's just the exchange of the initial sounds. Spoonerism is the exchange, like feel fitter, so feel better, exchange of the initial consonants. Here no exchange takes place, rather the initial sound, the initial consonant sound of a word is replaced by the initial sound of another word, right? Like if there no exchange takes place here, like ye k sound, this k sound and this t sound, these two sounds do not exchange their positions, rather one of them is replaced by another. If this cup of tea, right? So if this k sound is replaced by the t sound, so cup of tea, right? Could you please bring me a cup of tea instead of saying a cup of tea? So a person may say a cup of tea, right? So this is also a type of slip of the tongue, right? I think this much is sufficient. We may have so many other types of this slip of the tongue as well, right? Like there may be exchange of or interchange of the final consonant sounds between two or more words, right? For example, let's talk about this one as well. Uh, look before look before you leap, right? Look before you leap. So once a person said look, instead of saying look, the person said look before you leak, right? Now look at this, the p sound and the k sound, right? uh, Here is the pencil. Yes, this k sound, the final consonant here, right? This final consonant and this final consonant, look before you leap, right? So these two final consonants have been exchanged in this example. Like the p sound has come here, look, you see, and this look, the k sound has come here, leak. Look before you leap. So a person once said, look before you leak, right? So this is also a kind of a slip of the tongue. So how many types we have? The first one is spoonerism, where the initial consonant sounds of two or more words are exchanged, right? There is an interchange or exchange of the initial consonants, right? Then another type is that we may carry one sound from one letter to another, right? Just as in the case of this black boxes, instead of saying black boxes, there is black boxes. The sound is carried from the black, or the word black, right? So carrying one word, one sound, or carrying a sound from one word to the next word. Then replacing the initial consonant of a word by the initial consonant of another word is the example of cup of tea. So instead saying cup of tea, right? Instead of cup of tea. And the last example which I mentioned is exchange or interchange of the final consonants of words, the final consonants of two or more words, such as that example, look before you leap. So look before you leak, right? Yes, example, where did I write it? Somewhere. Yes. Okay. So this is all about slip of the tongue slips, right? Then there may be, yeah, remember one thing, slip of the brain, slip of the brain, right? These many people believe that these slips of the tongue are actually slip of the brain, right? They're actually slip of the brain. Why? Because if you remember in the previous class, we talked about this motor cortex, right, which is the part of the brain which is responsible for the muscular movement of all the body parts, and same is the case with the speech organs as well, which also contain muscles, right? So, the orders which these different speech organs receive, these orders actually come um, from the motor cortex, which is part of the brain actually. Now when the speech organs receive an incorrect order from the motor cortex, so then sometimes, like, instead of saying black boxes, the speech organs utter black boxes, right? So it means that this message actually comes from the motor cortex, from the brain. So that is why many people believe that these slips of the tongue are actually slips of the brain, because the tongue receives these orders, commands from the brain, from the motor cortex. That is why they should better be termed a slip of the brain instead of slip of the tongue. The next phenomenon is slip of the air, right? Just like slip of the tongue, there may be slip of the air. But there is a difference between the two, because slip of the tongue is related to the production of language, right? And slip of the air is related to the comprehension and perception of language, right? So sometimes we may misperceive things. We may misperceive things, like a person may say one thing and we may hear another thing. Okay, like when there is a misperception on part of the hearer, right? That is what we call slip of the air, right? Simple is that. Like look at the example, gray tape, right? Gray tape. And same is the case with this gray day. That was actually great day, right? So a person once said great tape, right? But instead the hearer comprehended it as great app, right? Instead of great gray tape, like gray color tape, right? The person heard great app, right? So that is, that kind of misperception. When there is a misperception on part of the hearer, or when the hearer misperceives something, right? Because of the similarity of pronunciation between two words. Like if you look at this gray tape, great app, so there is a similarity in the pronunciation. So in such situation, when a hearer misperceives something, that is what we call slip of the air, right? Same is the case with this one, gray day, right? Well, actually, if you look at the original form, let's suppose I have got grade A, right? Grade A. In the previous exam, the CR of this class got grade A, right? So like I want to say, actually, for example, I may want to say grade A, like he got grade A in his exam, right? But a person, a hearer, may interpret it as the hearer may perceive or comprehend it as grade A. Instead of grade A, a person may comprehend it as gray day, right? So this is also an example of slip of the air, right? Transcendental meditation. So a person may comprehend it as transcendental medication, transcendental meditation, right? The person may comprehend it as transcendental medication, right? We come across these slips of the air in our day-to-day conversation as well. Um, like when someone says one thing and the hearer misunderstands that point, that due to similarity of pronunciation between two words. Let's suppose if I say oh, you have got a very good book, right? So the person may comprehend this, the word book is hook. Oh, you have got a very good hook, right? So book and hook, they are similar. So there may be some sort of misperception in the recognition of these two words, right? But again, remember, it may be due to absence of the brain, right? Because a person may be very much, a person may be in a situation, or words may be uttered in a situation where there is no distortion at all, no noise at all, but still a hearer may miscomprehend a word. Why? Because of absence of the mind. When the person is not fully cautious, the person is somewhere else mentally, just as many of the students do in the class, right? They are busy in their phones, or they are thinking about their domestic issues, or sports, or politics, or many other things, PUBG game, right? Only physically they are in the class, so they may misinterpret, they may miscomprehend, mishear such words, right? So this is what we call slips of the air. When one thing is said, and the hearer hears something else, right? Comprehends or perceives something else. That is what we call slip of the air. Now remember one thing: these slips of the air, right, and slips of the tongue, they are actually due to similarity of pronunciation. Like when two words have got similar speech sounds, the number of speech sounds are similar, and the number of syllables are similar, speech sounds are similar in the number of syllables. So then some sort of misunderstanding may take place during the production of speech sounds or during the perception of speech sounds, is slip of the air or slip of the tongue, right? Like if you look at this no and blow, so n sound and b sound, they are there, and the you see number of syllables, that is the same, both are monosyllabic words. So such sort of confusion may take place then when there is similarity in the pronunciation of two words. So this is all about tongue tips and tongue slips, which are problems which take place in the production in comprehension of speech, right? In the next topic, which is speech disorders, there will talk about speech disorders, right? Permanent speech disorders like these slips of the tongue and slip of the air, they are temporary because of the absence of mind, right? But uh, there are some speech disorders which are very permanent in nature due to some damage to some parts of human brain. So we'll talk about those speech disorders in the coming session, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.